Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. All right, folks. Big Paul here today with Piere Fux. What's going on, man?
Thank you for having me. Love to be here. So looking forward to this.
Well, I'm not so big Paul compared to JP in his prime.
Yeah.
What were you on stage in your prime?
Oh, European tours when I was, it was 280.
280. Holy crap, man.
Olympia 272, 275, around there.
So off season, you had to have been over 300 then, right?
Well, 300, I was pretty much ready. I just didn't know how to get that on stage the right way. So yeah, I was anywhere. I looked very good with 310, 320. I didn't look so good with 340. So yeah, somewhere around there.
I can't imagine walking around 340 pounds. It's got to be miserable.
Well, thank God I was young. But yeah, it was definitely too much. You sweat like a pig all day. It's just you go home, you put your feet up and the fan in your face. So it's not something I would do again if I could redo things. So I remember I saw Dorian guest pose in southern Spain with 320. The guy didn't have any fat on him. He had striation in his back. Although it's mostly genetics. You see that sometimes, where guys have it on their legs or on their backs. Doesn't matter how much water they carry around. So we were all in competition with Dorian, unfortunately, back then. It was kind of the guy we were trying to emulate and beat. So I thought, okay, if he's 320, I go 340. Stupid, it's just absolutely stupid. So I remember I had a guy coming to my house with 340 from a smaller German magazine to take a picture in front of my house. When I saw that picture, it just hit me. What the hell are you doing? It's too much. It's turning more into a butcher kind of competition here. It's not bodybuilding anymore. And then the massive amount of food, it started to alter my physique, not to the better. You've seen it at the end of people's careers, with Dorian, with Ronnie. It just started to look all a little different.
Yeah, I can't imagine the amount of food that you have to eat to maintain a physique that size. I mean,
well, it's still funny that I didn't eat as much as when I was very, very young. I had phases when I was very, very young, 20, 21, where I ate like 8,000 calories a day. Mostly like, back then it was the Crash White Gainer number 8, some kind of crappy product from Weider, probably full of sugar. At the height of my career, it was usually like 5,600 calories. So it wasn't all that bad, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's not crazy. That's about what I get up to in my off seasons. I mean, I can't. I don't know. I think I was 280 at 280, 285 at the peak.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'1", right around 6'1". So
yeah.
But I mean, at my age, I don't know how smart it is carrying that kind of weight.
Oh, but, it's definitely probably not.
Yeah, but I'm going to make 1 or 2 runs at Masters at the Masters Pro Card and see what happens, and then after that, I'm downsizing. I don't want to carry around that kind of weight. But yeah, that's insane, man. I just, I can't imagine being that big, what that feels like. And now, like, guys are more aware of it, some of the health repercussions. Like, I don't think anybody paid attention to their blood pressure or sleep apnea or any of that stuff back in the 90s. I
kind of disagree.
Oh, you guys were?
Oh, blood pressure was a big issue.
Really? Yeah, I never heard anybody talk about it until in the last 10 years or so.
Oh, yeah. I check blood pressure regularly, red blood cells, that kind of stuff. Sleep apnea, probably less, yeah.
And what was your blood pressure like at that weight?
140 over 100.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, that's all things considering.
Yeah.
And did you guys run any blood pressure meds back then to help with that?
I didn't. I mean, when I took a lot of GABA before sleeping, the amino acid GABA, my blood pressure it was often very good in the morning, 120 over 80, even 110 over 75. Without the GABA was a little bit more difficult. So it definitely got me into a kind of longer REM-3 phase overnight. So I was conscious of, and I was very aware that I can die of this. Oh, absolutely. And I never, shared that opinion which you heard, maybe more back then than now, maybe not, I'm not sure. I don't care, if I die on stage, as long as I look good, whatever, I would trade my life for a Mr. Olympia title. Absolutely, I never had that attitude, not even close.
Well, I know a lot of guys do and still do.
Yeah. So I took breaks, after cycles. I took one longer break every year, at least when I didn't compete twice a year. So I was very, very aware. And then we had people dying, right around us, like Frank Hillebrand.
Yeah, I remember some of the guys.
Andreas Münzer. Momo's a little different, is from Diuretics. But we were very aware of the problem.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the guys escaped pretty healthy. I mean, Dorian still seems pretty healthy. But they all downsized.
Yeah, we never thought Dorian is going to be this healthy 60-year-old, but he is kind of a hippie health freak.
Yeah, doing his yoga and all that stuff.
Totally changed his ways, and that's good for him. Yeah.
And what do you weigh now?
I'm a slightly overweight, so I'm very healthy, good blood pressure, everything perfect when I'm 230.
Okay,
right now I'm 243, 244. My wife cooks so good. It's just sometimes a little tough, and I love the food. I just love good food, but I have to be careful. So I do a lot of cardio, a lot of sprints. Not really into working out, so I usually take the bike to the gym. And when I can, Palm Springs is a little difficult during the summer. We have 110, 20 degrees here. And then I do 5-6 sprints on the bike on the way here. And sometimes I get to the gym and I don't feel like working out anymore. That's not that important to me, but I make sure of the cardio. I go to the cardiologist once a year. It's not a guarantee that I'm escaped kind of from all of this, but it looks pretty good as of now,
And you still, I mean, so you're not weight training a whole lot, or you still do some?
3 times a week.
That's
can be 4, but we're really just clowning around. It's not like, compared to our workouts or a real workout like you do it, probably you can't call that a workout. It's me and my body, my English body, he's a tech guy. So it's really, it's not that much.
Oh, you're a tech guy?
No, my body is a tech guy.
Oh,
so we have sometimes like the laziest workouts, and he looks at me and he says like, "Wow, this was freaking great." Okay, I'm glad you like it. So like I said, that's not that important, but the cardio part is important to me.
Yeah, the cardio definitely gets more important as you get older. I have definitely neglected that part over the years, but it's seems like a lot of guys do. But it's funny how many older bodybuilders just kind of get burnt out on training and they just kind of move away from it. I don't even know that Dorian really lifts anymore. It doesn't.
I'm even further than that. I don't even find it attractive. That is the weird part. I don't even find it to look good on an older guy, but that's personal. I have some athletes I train, and when they check in, I have a guy, he's very great. He's top 2, top 3 over 60 in the country, amateur level. Mm-hmm. And I look at it and says, it's just kind of like a young man's sport. It's just, it's very hard to make the ass, the lower abs and all this stuff to look good. I mean, the guy looks fantastic, but I don't want to look like that. I really don't. Not even would it be with less work involved. I know how much work it takes. Even if I could just walk around like that with minimum of work, I wouldn't want it. It's just not kind of how I see a physique should look like in their 50s and 60s.
And when did you start? How old were you when you started lifting?
I had 2 starts pretty much. Lifting. With 8, 9, I became very interested in lifting. It had to do with a lifeguard in our local pool. The guy was, up till today, one of the most talented bodybuilders I've ever seen. Roger Albrecht, he was middleweight Swiss champion. Guy could have been at the Olympia. I mean, like so many, he was so talented. And I was very, very impressed, but I wasn't allowed to join the gym. So, we had this homemade devices. My grandfather gave me some stuff, but nothing really happened, like push-ups and ton of stuff like that. But nothing really happened. There's just a skinny kid with relatively good legs from playing soccer. With 15, on my 15th birthday was my first official workout. And right away, I had a great plan. So the light heavyweight Swiss champion did the instruction and had a professional plan right from the beginning on. I was kind of very early in talk how important food is. I ordered the vitamins, the proteins from Germany. So I didn't really waste any time as I was 15. I wanted to look like the guys up on the wall, So in that regard, I made tremendous progress right away. I was on stage with 16.
It seems like all the guys that are successful in bodybuilding start early. They start 15, 16 years old is when they start lifting.
I think Ronnie was a little older. Ronnie was a football player. That's probably a little different. I think Dennis was a chubby kid. Started with like 19 or so.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think when I started lifting. I was 18 or 19. Of course, I was obsessed with Arnold Schwarzenegger like everybody else was at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember reading his Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding and trying his workout routine, and I didn't make any progress. He left out the part about D-ball in the
Did you ever see his book in German? It was called The Life as a Bodybuilder.
No, I don't think so.
Much earlier. That was like my Bible.
Yeah, no, I don't think I saw that one.
That one really showed you the Arnold, kind of the way I see him still now, when he talked about the crazy workouts in the woods when they were loading up the weights and went to the woods and did squats for 2 hours. And that was my Bible, that book.
Yeah, I have to see if I can find that one. I love all these old bodybuilding books. I remember reading, I was younger, I remember reading Dorian Yates, his Blood and Guts book as well. That was pretty interesting. How did you train? What was your style of training?
At first, we all trained the same. In where I lived, it was a pyramid style, 4 exercises, 4 sets.
Okay.
Pretty much, we all trained the same: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, then Monday, Tuesday. All trained the same. It all worked pretty well. Actually, my shoulders were the only body part. Shoulders, triceps genetics, and my shoulders were the only body part which was really, really stubborn. And I didn't quite understand why. I trained chest, triceps Monday, back, biceps, rear shoulders Tuesday, and then legs and shoulders for some reason on Wednesday. So I pretty much had, if you consider the Monday workout, chest, I had chest. Chest is like a shoulder workout in a way, especially with all the bench press we did back then. So I pretty much trained shoulders on Monday and Wednesday. I didn't really find anything wrong with it. Everybody trained it like that. And till I saw a program of Ron Love. Ron Love had, beside Lee Haney, the best shoulder chest combo, in the world. And what I remember, he trained chest and shoulders together. Yeah. So he explained it with, you're already so warmed up and so ready to go. When the shoulders start, you don't need much. You need 5-6 sets. So I started to do chest, shoulders together, and that was just pure explosion after that. Everything worked just great after that.
It's interesting. You look at the guys from the 70s, so there was definitely something different with training. They didn't have big shoulders back then like the guys in the 90s.
I think bench press is to be blamed for it.
Yeah.
We killed bench press again, and bench press again. And then beside the bench press day, you had the shoulder day, So you were not even recovered from the bench press when you went to shoulders. I seen guys doing shoulders on the day, and the next day I saw them bench press in the gym. It was just hopeless overtraining, in my opinion, when it came to shoulders, besides not having probably some of the supplements we have today to recover. But I think the overtraining was a big part of that.
Yeah, overtraining and probably not access to some of the machines that we have now. There's definitely some different there's definitely some different tools. I mean, everything was barbell and dumbbell, probably
Well,
for the most part. Cables.
Kind of disagree with you here again. I love the Nautilus line.
Oh yeah, the Nautilus stuff. Yeah, I actually worked at a Nautilus when they were still open. That's where I started out training. And but they did have some great machines. Some of those old chain driven machines.
It was often, we had machines, especially when you went to a bigger gym in the city or so. But it was, you got to do free weights. That was the whole holy grail. You know, free weights are better, which I, of course, heavily disagreed today. That was part of the reason.
And how are you training like your clients now? What sort of routine do you have them do now? What is your philosophy on training at this point?
I changed a few years in. I started realizing, I started like that because that's where I still at today. I started realizing that with the 4 sets per exercise, I never realized the first few years that you're just kind of holding back a little bit, and then the third, 4th sets where you kind of went all out. So in that sense, was it really 4 sets? It's kind of probably not. And I also didn't realize so much back then. Also for the reason that everything grew kind of well, that certain body parts might need more training than others. So pretty early in, I would say 93. I started with a system where I cut the workouts in half. So it was more 2 sets per exercise. And so I did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the basics.
Okay.
Chest, shoulders, back, arms, and then leg on one day. Then I took a day or 2 off. And then I spent 2 days on weaknesses where I felt like I need improvements. So the first 3 days I did very heavy weights, mostly 8 to 12 reps. And then at the end of the week, I did more of a pump, kind of 15, 20 reps.
Okay, so you were getting both in.
Yeah. It was kind of explained to me back then about different muscle fibers and different way of training. And it was kind of tough at first to get away from the not Arthur Jones theories, 8 to 12 is the way to go, 8 to 12. But I had very good success with pumping, at the end of the week. And then the workout 5 and 6 at the end of the week kind of changed, depending on, after a few months, it's like, I need a little bit more here. So I changed those a little bit. But the first 3, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, stayed fairly the same. And even today, I have a fairly similar kind of way of training with my clients. I do a little bit more reps, and today I think it's just not, especially when you train older guys, the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reps, it can be quite dangerous, and once you get injured, every progress stops. But I'm kind of still there, covering the body, and then work on weaknesses later in the week.
Yeah, I definitely, with you talk about training for the older guys, I have definitely changed how I train as I've gotten older. I have the rep scheme higher than what I did. I'd say most pretty much like compound exercises, I'm more in the 10 to 12 rep range now, and sort of the auxiliary stuff probably more like 15. And I've done pretty well with that. And it's if you're injured, you can't, as you said, you can't progress, and it's definitely, there's a higher risk of injury as you get older. So I steer away from the higher risk exercises and just try to keep myself in the gym at this point.
But even if I could go back in time, there's not too much in that regard I would change. There's the last rep, we just have this attitude kind of that either a workout partner has to help you, kind of, or you really have to collapse. I don't see that quite like that anymore. I mean, I maybe would back off a little bit in that regard. Like, for example, when we did the squats Monday morning, we had the squat rack ready, and we did not finish if we could put the weights back in. Only if you collapse on the rack. So there was some days with lower back pain and stuff like that, which maybe weren't necessary. But other than that, I wouldn't really change too much in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, that was the 90s attitude. You weren't done unless you collapsed.
Yeah.
It's funny, you don't see many people like it's always a rant for me, but I go into the gym, I don't really see that many people train hard anymore. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Most people, but I do, there is a threshold of where, it can become counterproductive. So it's a balance.
I mean, look, I would say I trained like Dorian minus 1 rep, 1 or 2. I mean, Dorian went beyond, I mean, when you see some of those sets there, but he has some regrets when it comes to that. He told me once I could have won 10 of those things,
Probably.
With at the end, everything kind of fell apart with him. And I saw Ronnie train around 2001, 2002, quite a bit on guest posings and things. I don't know if he purposely trained a little bit lighter when he was traveling. That's possible, but I didn't see any of that crazy shit like I see on those videos, So he was not having a workout partner. I mean, Ricky Gates, his partner, was working out with him, but I didn't see any of like reaching in and 3 more and 2 more, and I didn't see any of that. But it's also possible that when he traveled, although one time I saw him training daily or twice a day, every day in Hawaii, and it gave me some pause about how I trained, so I would definitely probably train a little bit lighter if I could go back in time.
It's certainly possible that Ronnie was just showing off for the camera too. So there is that.
Well, his body looks like there was definitely some crazy stuff for heavyweight in it, but that's not how I saw it when I saw him train.
Yeah, I mean he's legendary for being Ronnie, from what I understand, not only trained heavy but also did a lot of volume too. So he's just sort of an anomaly. It's
a freak, and then every body part twice a week.
Yeah, you don't see many people do high volume, high intensity, and high frequency like that. That most people would break. Yeah, and I guess he eventually did. So yeah, that's
well, that was 20 years into his career. The guy had a very, very long career. I think that was the main issue why he totally fell apart at the end. He was a successful bodybuilder in the early 90s. When did he win the World Championships? 91?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. And then all the way up to 2006. I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, he had a long career. It's there's some guys now, though. It seems like guys now seem to last a lot longer. Of course, guys like Dexter Jackson, and then oh God, what's his name? Kamal Ergani. These guys that are just still look great.
Did you ever see Dexter train?
I heard he trained really light.
Oh, it's like what I saw. I saw him training at Venice. More power to him if you can make things work like that. I don't think I had the genetics to train this light and just pump, Or then again, I'm not going to say I know exactly how he trained if I go to Venice 3 times a year for a few days. So it's not quite that I see them all year long. But, I mean, that's really smart if you can do that, grow like that, and, have that longevity. I mean, that's great.
And it's possible too. I mean, this is something I've always speculated about, that it's not you don't have to go as hard to maintain once you hit a certain point, that maybe the training was different on the way up. It's the same thing with the PEDs too. Like, I think guys don't realize once you hit a certain point that it doesn't take as much to maintain as it does to push.
They always say it also back in the days that like Flex Wheeler doesn't train hard. I saw a very young Flex Wheeler doing pretty crazy stuff in the gym. Like, 445 plates on the side, incline bench press, and guys are screaming at each other when he trained with Chris and Paul Dillet, Charles Glass. And especially then also in 99, I trained pretty much always at the same time. He trained exceptionally hard. So I don't know exactly, where people think he didn't train hard. Didn't train Dorian hard, but nobody did.
Yeah, nobody trained like Dorian. Dorian was a one of a kind.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the only person I heard of that sort of had the reputation of not training hard and got great results was Paul Dillet.
Yeah.
I'd always heard those stories that the guy just barely went through the paces.
Yeah,
in the and a genetic mutant.
Mostly like liquid food. And I saw him training quite a bit, 95, 96. But then 94, it was before I was still amateur. 94, he was really, really good. Even his poses kind of hit, and then kind of went away, and he just looked good in the lineup.
Yeah, it was weird with him. I don't even know if that he trains or anything anymore. You don't hear from him anymore at all. I don't even know where he's at now.
Well, he's president of this WBF.
Is he?
You know that?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Some kind of federation, but there's a lot of accusations about corruption and wouldn't be so surprised, Paul. You know that the girls who win, had to kind of deserve it. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, I've heard that stuff too.
Yeah.
As far as nutrition goes, what is your philosophy on nutrition?
So I knew from early on that fats are fairly important. I also looked better with somewhat higher fats, lower carbs. Okay. But then once I started working with insulin, mid-90s, I just kind of had half a day more fats, medium carbs, medium protein. I was never big into protein. It always seemed like my kidneys were kind of overspilling if I went up to 450. So I mostly in off-season like 350 grams of protein. And then during the time of the day where I didn't use insulin, I did a little bit more fat. And then around the workout when I used insulin, I was just doing carbs and protein. I think the major mistake I made, I felt kind of like what kind of carbs I'm eating doesn't really matter. So it looked okay. If I make the bread myself, I can just eat a ton of bread. I did not even recognize really the difference between pasta and rice. So I was a huge pasta eater, and I think it started to inflame my gut.
Right.
That kind of eating. So I got away with it the first 5 years maybe till 90. I remember 98, I saw a picture first day of my diet where it was suddenly, totally lean in the stomach, but bloated up, really like bloated or visceral fat. And I think it was mostly because of wrong food choices. So food became kind of my enemy here.
Yeah, a lot of times that gluten, like you can get away with it when you're younger, and then it just as you age, you've got to be more and more careful with your food choices. I've definitely noticed that as I've gotten older. It's pretty much for me, it's pretty much rice anymore for my carbohydrates. So
it's absolutely the best you can do, and especially certain times I trained twice a day, so I used insulin twice a day, and we didn't have quite short-acting insulins as now, which you can do insulins for 1 or 2 hours. Back then it was 5-6 hours. Humalog, I don't even know if Humalin R, I think it was called.
Yeah, Humalin R, yeah.
Yeah, then when I did it twice a day, quite a bit of carbs came together on days like that. And it could easily be that I ate 2 big portions of pasta a day. That was a mistake.
Yeah, and you don't see the guys, it seems like less so, I would say now people have sort of figured out the big gut thing and how to control it. But I speculate that a lot of it was just visceral fat and just poor food choices.
Well, it had absolutely nothing to do with growth hormones, like it's sometimes said. Absolutely nothing to do with it. There was a guy in Germany who wrote a book about growth hormones with my picture without the face on the title, and at the end, it turned out that picture came out. That looked so miserable because of a sports hernia. So I wish I could have sued the guy, but it was purely food. I remember that phase when it really started to more be visible. It was the prep for the 98 Arnolds. The first time, 97, I looked really good at the Olympia. Screwed up the European tour, but looked really good at the Olympia. Placed 5th in the finale, was only 7th overall, but the people were really good. Lee Priest placed in his absolute best shape, placed 6th. 98 had hardly a break after 97, went into the diet for 98. It was pretty much dieting since 93, where I did every year 1 or 2 shows. And suddenly I had absolutely no motivation the very, very first time. And I was considered to be one of the 2 or 3 favorites to win the Arnolds. Flex then won the Arnolds in a pretty great shape, but Flex really struggled 96, 97. 96, he wasn't very good. 97, he had the famous ninja, I don't know if you remember, incident where he didn't compete at all, where he claimed ninjas attacked him, so he couldn't compete.
No, I didn't know about that one.
Nobody knew where he's 98. And I thought we probably can beat Flex, and then it's between Nasser and I could not get motivated. I just was gone. And then almost every morning, or at least 4 times a week, I went to this breakfast buffet in the morning, eating massive amounts of food. Totally brainwashing myself that my body needs that now. And then spend 5-6 hours on the bike. It's just at this point, you clearly see this was not a healthy human being. There was way deeper issues than just I can't hold a diet. So it's pretty much a sick person at that moment. And you could see at the Arnold's 98, the very first time that my stomach was just too big. So I placed only 4th. Was clearly the 3rd best athlete there, but there's a few judges who were just really bothered the way I controlled my midsection. So it came absolutely from those food orgies and not from anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if it were, people always blame the growth hormone, but if it was actual organ growth, people would still have the large guts when they retire, and they don't. They go away.
Yeah, and I didn't have, I didn't take that much growth hormones really, for several reasons. It was extremely expensive. It was $250 a day in Switzerland just for 4 units. You had the chance to buy growth hormones from Russia, which I only did once, from not synthetic growth hormones. It was a little cheaper, but it was very, very expensive. And when I started growth hormones, I never took growth hormones to become a pro. I started growth hormones, and then you do it, and you have all those high expectations, but you can't really tell. Does it really work? Does it not work? And you think, okay, if it's just a few percent, it sure works. But I was never really convinced that did a lot. I would be curious to see hypothetical how it would look like without GH.
Yeah, it's a very subtle thing, and you'll see the guys now. Like I talk to some of the pros now, and they run a ton of it. Like I hear guys frequently running 18 units a day. I mean, that's not uncommon. Yeah. Hearing guys running crazy amount. And I bet, I'm sure back then nobody was running anywhere close to that, but just because of the cost would have been too prohibitive.
Yes, and I think in the 80s bodybuilders, the Liani period, I think most of them were not even on it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Around then it was I don't think synthetic hormone was manufactured until the late.
No, they 80s. did have the non-synthetic ones from Russia.
The hormone, that stuff that ends up giving you mad cow disease, basically rot your brain out.
It could happen, yeah.
Yeah, it could happen. That was the rumor that would happen to Lyle Alzado. I don't know if that was true or not, but
well, its chances very low. But I was one who actually got it, but he wasn't a bodybuilder.
Yeah, man, that stuff was dangerous. But I don't, what were guys running with growth hormone back then? Probably, I had always heard maybe 4 or 6 units, something like that.
I never did more than 4.
4,
ever. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was high quality, good stuff. It was pharmaceutical, but never did more than 4. And I stopped when I stopped the cycle. It was usually 12 weeks, and then I stopped the GH as well. Right. Never longer on that than that.
Yeah, and I think, I hear these crazy doses that people talk about taking now. And I know there were some guys back then that were pushing things really high, like Nasser and stuff. But I think a lot of it now is just the cheap, crappy underground PEDs that people take. The real pharmaceutical grade stuff that people had back then, you didn't have to run as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had really high quality, good stuff. I ran the first time into trouble when I moved to the United States in 99, when I first time bought underground stuff, really.
Yeah, I mean, the UGL stuff, I think it's just underdosed. A lot of it's not even real. It's not even what you think it is. I mean, what did a typical cycle look like back in the 90s?
I pretty much dosed the same cycle. Whenever I went away from the cycle I'm going to tell you about, I was disappointed, so in the first few years you just there was not, you can buy whatever you want and stuff. Right. So we had always this traveling Czechoslovakians showing up at our gym 2 or 3 times a week. It was always the guys from Czechoslovakia who showed up with a suitcase. So then, my first real cycle, I did a few, like take one of these pills a day and this before that. But my first real cycle, I was about 19 and a half, 20, was DECA and testosterone, 250 DECA, 250 testosterone. And progress was just through the roof. You know, it's just absolutely, you could just pretty much daily see me grow. But then let's get later in the career, when I was at top of the game. Off-season was always, as a base, I used testosterone and Primo. I tried other stuff as a base, like Boldenon or DECA. It didn't quite be as good for me than Primo. That was my base. And then I run for 4 weeks, Masteron and T-ball, but never more than 25 milligrams of T-ball. Then I run for 4 weeks, Tren. And then I had to decide. After 8 weeks, I kind of had to decide, do I need another push getting bigger, or do I go more for quality now? Depending on that, I went back on the Masteron D-ball mix. There's up with 350, 400 milligram of Masteron and 25 milligram of D-ball. Or I then switched to Masteron only or Winstrol. I was always that cycle with Proviron, very little Arimidex. And the GH, that was kind of my cycle pretty much. And I tried other stuff when somebody like, hey, you got to try this or that. But rarely, it just didn't work for me. I always came back to that cycle.
Yeah, Test and Primo is what I pretty much hear everybody ends up settling on at some point.
Yeah,
that's the base of everything.
The big problem with Primo was, there was one company sharing from Germany who sold the Primo. So they were 50 milligram per cc. And you have to take 350, 400, sometimes even 500. So you had to throw in 10 vials. So that was 8 to 10 vials. That was a little difficult. But
yeah, you have to run a fair amount of Primo to get a result from it.
Yeah, I like Primo as a base. That was good.
And how much tests were you running at your peak?
As an amateur, 500. As a pro, 1,000.
1,000. Okay. Yeah. See, like it's guys have these fantasies in their head that it's way more than that. It's
and there was pressure. There was pressure to take more. I do remember, but I had a very good mentor early in, Harry Derglin. He's an amazing athlete. This little lightweight guy. He was, I think, one of the first when they started the Masters, the Masters World Championships. I think he was the first or second winner, the 70 category, some kind of Labrada type. And he always said to me, he owned the gym in Bern, amazing guy. And he always said to me, listen, I want to tell you something about this high doses and all this stuff there. I says, if you take more, it works better. And I'm like, oh, I thought I shouldn't take more. He says, I'm going to tell you, it works better for about 5-6 months. And then your body's going to be used to the higher doses and you're in a devil's circle. You're going to have to take more and more all the time. It is not what you should do. I said, and think about it. He asked me, how long do you take? And I was very, very young here. It was early 90s. He says, how long it will take to become Mr. Olympia? I said, I don't know, 10 years, 5 years, He says, that's how you have to look at it. It's a 10-year project, How can you make your body improve over 10 years and not just 1 or 2 years? Yeah. So never take more. And that's what I did. There were some rumors about athletes. I remember the first one I heard, and I would always like to ask him if there was any truth to it, who's supposed to take a ton of shit was Perry DeMay.
Yeah.
So I was told, the Dutch culture in general, the Dutch take a lot, and he's taking 6,000-7,000 a week. So he showed up. He was at the guest posing near my hometown in Geneva. And I went to see him. I was a junior, 19, 20, 21 years old. So I saw him pumping up, and he wasn't really bigger than me. I thought, okay, if he takes that much, then I'm already as big as him. Although I remember then I went over to the crowd. I went around, and when he walked on stage, he was totally different. He looked absolutely freaking amazing. But I was never convinced. And it's not that I was not convinced that I should take more. I didn't feel like I don't take a lot. I mean, if you have like 400 or 500 primo as a pro, 1,000 testosterone, 3 or 4 tren a week, and 300 or 400 on the first 4 weeks of masteron and the D-ball. I mean, I was like, oh, I can freaking die of this. I was never feeling like, oh, I should maybe throw in twice as much. I never felt like I should take more. I thought I'd taking a lot. Yeah?
Well, if you can't grow on that, you're probably not going to grow.
Absolutely.
That's what I tell people. And a lot of times it's, training or diet doesn't match up with what people are taking.
Yeah.
But there are, you'll know pretty quickly, like you talked about your first cycle, the 250 test or 200 deca or whatever it was, but you'll know quickly if you're going to respond and grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see it all the time with people that I've coached and stuff. The guys that have the genetics for it, they'll grow off of basically nothing.
And I look pretty good, even natural. I look pretty good.
Yeah, and you can see it too. Like you can look at the pictures of Ronnie when he was natural. I mean, the dude was huge. Yeah. I don't know how true it is, but they say he turned pro when he was natural. That's the story that I heard.
It's probably not far off.
Yeah, that was the story. I mean, but you can see the pictures of him when he was in high school. He was 15, 16 years old. He looked like a grown man.
Yeah. Did you ever see that picture when Kevin was 14?
Yeah.
I mean, he's very thin, but what an amazing looking kid, guy. So you can clearly tell those guys have great genetics.
He lives in my area. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I think he's from up in Baltimore, but I used to see him around once in a while. And he was unreal. He would not train like half of the year and just look like a regular guy. and then turn it up and then turn into an Olympian. I've never seen anybody else.
Although it didn't quite work out when he was 50, when he tried to do the same thing.
No, it didn't, So your body's not going to respond the same way it does when you're 25.
He was absolutely incredible. I remember European tour. We were kind of hit and miss, a lot of us. You had the show Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 or 4 shows a week. You seen the guys like one night looking great, the other one not. And Kevin looked very consistently good, every night. And I heard him once talk about it. I always talk back then, those guys really know what they're doing. They're like really pros and they know what they're doing. And I think there's only one of us who really knew what they were doing. That was Dorian. The rest of them were all hit and misses there. So he said, well, whenever I wasn't sure, what to do and how much to eat, I just stopped eating and drinking at all. He said, So, yeah, and he won one show after another on the tour. So, yeah, he was great.
I mean, he just had fantastic genetics. Clearly, if you can take half the year off and not train and then get in that sort of shape. There's
in 97, he was 4th. He was really 5th. They claimed they count the points together wrong. In reality, Lee Priest was 4th, but then on the way to the banquet, they changed it all around. That suddenly Lee was 6th and Kevin was 4th, but doesn't matter. In 94 and 97, I beat him in every pose, Kevin. I had a comparison with him, beat him in every pose. So I couldn't believe how can he beat me, So I saw a video of it. The guy, the way he was standing up there, the way he was moving, never making a mistake, once you finish the video, it's like, yeah, if you take a still shot of the pose, I might beaten him, but when you look at the whole package, he absolutely deservingly beat me. The guy was really great on stage.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I saw him compete in the 90s, and he was just absolutely amazing. The guy had a crazy physique. And just unreal physique. But so you say Dorian was the only one that had to figure it out.
I think Dorian really knew what he was doing. I mean, he looked every night exactly the same, the European tour. And I think he was approaching the things very scientifically. And I also know he tried a lot of different systems growing up as amateur. He was not a hit and miss. He hit in every show. I mean, the couple of times when he kind of missed it was 94. I mean, he just tore his biceps. I'm sure the body is going to, with the pain medication, whatever is on, it's going to be very, very hard to dry out. 96, I think he struggled like most of us a little bit on the new diuretic tests. And 97, his body just didn't react anymore. But all the European shows I've seen, 92, 3, 4, 5, up to 6, he was very, very consistent on stage and really knew what he was doing.
And back then for diuretics, everybody was using Lasix, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Aldactone.
Aldactone, okay.
Yeah, I didn't really use Lasix. I mean, I couldn't use diuretics most of the time. When I competed in Miss Universe, 89, 93, 94, they had strict tests. And people were disqualified. It was not just some alibi test they run. I mean, there were constantly like 5, 6, 7 guys in my class disqualified. So I didn't take diuretics. Then I became pro. In 96, I went to the Arnolds. And I didn't have really a nutritionist or anything like that. But, my friend who was kind of advised me not to take diuretics. It was a mistake. So I didn't take diuretics there either. And then the week later, I went to San Jose. That's pretty much the first time I used diuretics. I used Aldactone for like a week or so. It was really, really great. Lasix was already kind of known to fuck you up. I mean, a lot of people took it, but I didn't. I had a couple of times I had liquid Lasix. So 2 hours before the show, I took a shot and he started peeing pretty much immediately. The European tour, but most part of my career, I couldn't take diuretics.
Yeah, and a lot of guys now don't run them, from what I understand. There are some that do, but you can, if you're dialed in, you can get things.
Yeah.
If you're with water manipulation and whatnot, a lot of times you don't need them. I found, at least with me, like when I've experimented with it, I think it flattens me out. I look worse.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'm not going to say the Aldactone during the European tour so it didn't help, but Lasix, like, hardly ever took that.
Yeah, Lasix is pretty nasty. But yeah, a lot of guys now use Aldactone is what I hear. Aldactone and then hydrochlorothiazide.
And now Diazide, I wasn't familiar to me back then, Diazide. I'm sure they had it. Now with the athletes I trained over the last few years, I usually just do 1 day of Diazide, possibly a little bit on the morning of the show, depending on the shape.
Yeah.
But I remember one guy is a really great athlete, Mike Cleaves. He won the overall 2019 North American. Unfortunately, decided not to become pro. He wanted to do other things in life. I remember he competed against Derek at the USA. I think they were first and second. It was 2018 or 17. And he looked so great at 4 a.m. when we did the first check-in. I mean, he should have walked right on stage there. And I knew we're in trouble. It's still, can be 1, 2 p.m. till the guy's on stage. And he looked like absolutely perfect. Then he left the house. He went to some kind of meeting, tanning, that kind of stuff. When he came back at 9, he looked 70% of that. He's like a freaking water balloon. I don't know exactly what happened here. And that's the one time I kind of around 9:30 in the morning, we did a 10 milligram of Lasix and kind of to chase that early shape again and kind of got it to 90, 95% maybe. But other than that, if it's not really an emergency, I never ever used their Lasix with anybody.
Yeah, it's weird how some people will hold water and others don't. I see some guys that just seem to hold water like crazy, and other guys don't. It's very interesting. The human physiology is. I tend to be very dry. I think I don't generally need it, but there's some guys that do.
Yeah, I was definitely holding water easily, I gotta tell you. And the best shapes I had were often by accident. Unfortunately, I didn't have really a good system in place. It was kind of all over the place the last week. And in 97 at the Olympia, I was very watery at the pre-judging. I knew after the comparisons I'm 7th. You can tell how it goes and who gets compared with whom. And in the evening show, didn't look much better, but the show was postponed like an hour and a half because they were doing all kinds of giving each other medals and stuff, the officials, and it just dragged on forever. And Joe Weider was talking for maybe a half an hour or longer. And I started sweating, like really sweating backstage, and really dried out in with the next like 45 minutes to an hour. And the second I walked on, I was really dry. So it's not really fun or great when you look great on accident, So
I remember talking to Jay Cutler, and he was talking about if you have 1 or 2 perfect peaks in a lifetime, that's about as good as it gets.
Who you think had, like, when you look at any of the top guys, when you look at when there's only very few I can think about which is like as good as it gets. Like 2008 Dexter, I think. I mean,
yeah,
it's just hard to kind of. Or then maybe 2009 Jay. Ronnie, I don't know. In 98, he was tried the bone. He was really, really great. But he wasn't that big.
right.
And you can see that when he's next to Nasser. So I think he was still very beatable in 98. Not by Nasser, Nasser didn't have the backside. And then later on, when he was this monster, he was clearly not as dry and lean anymore. But it's very rare that you see somebody absolutely hitting their peak.
Well, it's really hard to be as big as Ronnie and to be dry as well, too.
Yeah,
so that's another issue, too. So these big guys, I imagine just to even hold his fullness that he would have to pound down a lot of food. And from what I understand, I think he was working with Chad Nichols, but Chad Nichols really pushes guys hard on the carb ups too.
Yeah, 1,000 grams a day for several days.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, is that Chad's really aggressive with the carb ups with his guys.
Maybe the best kind of when he really hit it pretty much perfect, although he had some major issues backstage in the morning, was the 2001 Arnold's.
Yeah,
he was really, really big and hard there.
Yeah, he was there. Who do you like now? This Olympia is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I like a few guys, and they're so very different right now, so it's a tough one. So, I think there's nobody who doesn't believe that Derek will win sooner or later.
Right.
And I'm not a fan yet of Derek. I'm probably the only one, because I just don't see the quality in the chest, shoulder, arms. It's very strange. I watch him since he's an amateur. I've seen him at the USA. And how can a guy be so hard and have such a quality in the back and it's just not in the front? I know it's genetics. And I never really seen the striation and, on the chest or on the shoulder. And if he would hit that, people always say it's just maturity. Maturity is missing. But I know people, they had striation all over the place with 18. So
right.
I don't know. So considering that he was pretty close second last year, it's going to be very, very hard to beat him. It looks like he improved quite a bit again. It'll be very, very hard to beat him. Hadi, his chances, the quality, if Derek is kind of like last year, there's always an opening for Hadi. I love Hadi's physique, although he looks a little blocky in the lineup. The one who could really, really, kind of make life miserable for them with a better quality is Samson.
Yeah, Samson's the one I'm fascinated with.
Yeah. If he comes in with a good quality, it's not just that he will win. He might win 3 or 4 in a row. I don't know how old he is. And then there is
young. I think he's early 30s.
Yeah, and Nick is kind of the Rich Kaspari of our time. Nick has to wait for 2 or 3 guys to screw up.
Right.
He just has to consistently be great, and I have no doubt he can do that. And you never know that there might be the right day, and everything is aligned perfect. But can he make it on his own without help of others? I don't think so.
I saw Samson at the New York Pro. I was at the New York Pro this year, and he is impressive in person. Holy crap!
He's tall
he was
too,
just there. Yeah, he's probably 6 foot, I would say, around 6 foot. I think he was like, when I talked to him, he was just there hanging out at the New York Pro. But I think he said he was like 330, 340.
Yeah.
And he looked lean. He looked lean. He was one of the biggest dudes I've ever seen in person.
And I've seen that rear lat pose now, how improved that is. So yeah, he has a good shot, but there's also some issues, I think, with the carving up and the quality. So we have to see. I think the most consistent 2 guys when it comes to shape is Nick and Hadi.
Yeah, Nick is very consistent, and Hadi's always in condition.
Yeah, and then look at the Brandon. Brandon did it exactly what I was just describing about Nick. He came in good and and then at the right year at the right time, and he won. So he's very good too, but I see him more kind of moving to the back over time. But I can be wrong. He has a great physique, and last year he was a little bit too big and still fourth. So yeah, I like those guys. They all look good, and I don't see any. Do you see anybody from the outside kind of getting into that circle here?
No, I think it's that. I think it's that group.
Yeah. So when you've seen those guys who now won in Europe, like Nathan and Regan, they're just so far away from that group.
Yeah, I don't see them competing.
Yeah.
With that group, they're not going to be in the top 5. And I don't know if Ramy's done or what the deal is with him.
I think he is, but he was great at the Arnolds. Even more frustrating. He only plays 4th, but he had a great career. So winning 2 Olympia titles, what can you do? Guys? So he's great, and I think he's financially very set, and it's all good. So I would never tell him don't compete anymore. If you want to compete, guy. You're a legendary bodybuilder, but I don't think he will come back and win again.
Yeah, I also met him at the New York Pro. He was a super nice guy, just very nice, very humble, easy to talk to. I think, if I heard him, there's a little bit of a language barrier, but if I understood him correctly, when I talked to him at the Arnold or at the New York Pro, he said he hadn't been training. Said he hadn't trained in several months.
Well, that doesn't really impress me too much. So I don't know. It's what they said last year is way better, because the first time he trained for a year and then he turned out he wasn't way better. So, I don't give a damn if you trained heavier or not. Just we'll see how you look,
Yeah, he said he had been taken off, if I understood him correctly. But he was super nice, just very, very humble, very nice. Samson was super nice too. I've met some guys that aren't so nice, but
yeah, I don't know. Over the years, most people have been very nice. I can couple of whom I can think of, absolutely. Hey, did you ever hear that Ramy is like a fisherman?
Yeah. I think his family, that's what they did.
So he's like out there for days at a time, and
he goes out. He has his boat and he goes out and fishes. From what I understand, so I think that's what he loves to do. He just happened to be a good bodybuilder. And
you can also see with Hadi that he's just a genuinely good guy. And then, his speech last year where he was mentioning women in Iran, that's very courageous.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. So
that can get you thrown in jail there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a very good guy. I love him too. He's always in shape. That guy's always shredded.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of him that have come out recently, but he looked really good.
I did, and better quality than I ever had, probably on the stage. This is like the picture was 7-8 weeks out.
Yeah, he looks
an incredible guy, and I heard he trains very, very hard. But if I would have to put my money on somebody right now, I'll bet on Derek.
Yeah, I would probably put my money on Derek as well.
Yeah.
I really like Samson though. Samson's sort of my dark horse. I think he's sort of the wild card. You don't know what you're going to get though. The interesting thing with him is that I don't know if you heard Milos talking about it, but I heard him on another podcast saying that Samson had never used Tren before, and that was that he used it for the Arnold first time last year, and he was scared to use it. That's hilarious to me that guy made it to that level and never used Tren.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and supposedly like he had never run any really major cycles before. He's just a genetic freak.
Well, but they can now run to work in his advantage.
Yeah, you're right. Like you said, it's the 10-year. You got to have a 10-year plan.
Yeah,
if you're going to do it, it's not going to happen overnight.
He has some reserves now, and if that's really true, even more power to him. I had a guy once. He also won a pro card who had to use a minimum amount of steroids. His liver started to, he didn't have scarring in the liver, but his liver started to inflame immediately. There's no way you could throw in like a holotestin a day or so the last couple of weeks or anything like that. So you have to be very, very conservative. And when we started that project, pro card, he's like, I don't know, my liver is not good enough. But he was constantly on the supervision from doctors, and they constantly checked his liver. And I just can't take a lot. And I convinced him that this is an advantage. You came this far with so little. So now it's stick with that guy, and it seems to work. And then he did win a pro card.
Yeah, that's supposedly the story with Chris Bumstead too, because I know he has some health issues, or I think it's some sort of autoimmune disorder or something where he can't run a whole lot. That's what I've heard. And Chris Bumstead, of course, he's up against that weight cap, so I'm sure even for him.
But did they not change that now?
It went up 5 pounds. I mean, but what's 5 pounds?
Yeah.
I think so it's 239 now.
You see anybody, considering he's in shape, who could ever threaten him?
Ramon Dino, maybe. I don't know, but I don't know. I think it's Chris's as long as he wants it.
Yeah, that guy, the Wesley.
Yeah,
Wissers, he's very good.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. I don't know. It's when you put them up on stage next to each other, it's always very different. Seeing two guys, you can look at them in photos and say this guy's going to take that guy, but then when you actually see them up on stage together, it's completely different. I was sort of stunned when I went to the New York Pro this year. I've been to quite a few shows this year from coaching, but like how the people out of the top 5 weren't in shape, it just blew me away. Yeah, people on the amateur stage are in better shape than a lot of the pros are at national shows.
Well, it happened to me a few times, but it was always kind of like I signed a contract, tried to get out of the contract, and then it just kind of stopped dieting already. Then suddenly got a letter from the lawyers, from Vida, and it's like, you do compete, and I wrote back, and that's how. And I very much regret that. I should have just stayed off stage, because you still have to look at those pictures for the rest of your life. It's like, what the hell is going on with this guy? Well, I was not even dieting. But then, I was always kind of already enrolled in the green card program, so I couldn't just like, screw you. I don't need that contract, to kind of keep going. But there's a couple of real regrets I had, where I was just standing on stage totally out of shape.
I've often wondered, if it's exactly that, what you said, if it's just guys fulfilling contracts, being up there, and they know they have no chance of winning, and they just kind of half-ass it. And at a national show, like an NPC show, everybody there's trying to get a pro card. So I think guys are pouring the gas on. It's their one shot. So they probably, but it's, we were talked about beforehand. I was at Masters Nationals, and I was just shocked at how high quality the competition was. It was excellent. All right, man, I got to wrap this up. Is there anything you want to promote before we go?
No, thank you for inviting me. It was great.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. I love talking about old school bodybuilding. How old are you now?
55.
55. Yeah, so I'm almost 50. So we're pretty much in the same age bracket. Although I didn't take bodybuilding seriously until I got over 40.
You do it now. You do it now, okay?
Yeah, I'm doing it now. I'm competing. We'll see what happens. Well, I appreciate you coming on, JP. Thank you very much. This was awesome, man. I really enjoyed the talk.
Good luck at the Masters, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon, okay? Bye-bye.